So this podcast might sound a little bit differently because I actually did it as a group call for my clients. And it was all about, I had a few clients talking about, should I consider an egg donor or not? And just how do I go about it? And I'm so unsure of it. And so what I ended up doing was putting together kind of what I do with people one-on-one when they have that question for me. Should I be considering an egg donor yet or not? And so I go through the process of the steps to take when deciding, but then I also went through a lot of resources that could help. And I end with facts, myths, when it comes to using an egg donor. So I understand this quality might not be as good as the other podcasts because I didn't have my special microphone and all that. If you're watching this, I don't even have makeup on. But I thought that this conversation was so important that I had to share with you. If you have any other questions about if you should use an egg donor or not, feel free to contact me, tasha@tashablasi.com. And of course, go to my website, tashablasi.com, because what I put together is an IVF issues quiz where you fill in a few data points and then out comes tailored resources for your next step. So go ahead, and that is a must do. Check it out. And from there, you need other resources. Any email that I send you, just email me back and it will definitely eventually get to you, Mama. All right, here is the Hopefully Clear podcast on what you should do if you are maybe possibly considering an egg donor, but you're just not quite sure. All right, we are going to be talking about facts and myths of using an egg donor. And really what I kind of want to go through is the process of how and when you know if you should use an egg donor. I probably think of this a lot, maybe a bit differently than you've been told in the past. And then I have a bunch of myths when it comes to using an egg donor and that I want to kind of debunk, right? Let's start with how and when to choose if you need an egg donor or not. When I'm working with somebody and they're asking me that question, like, how do I know? I ask them a series of questions. And because ultimately how they're answering them is going to give us more information. And of course, especially something like, should I use an egg donor or not? Like, that's a big decision. I challenge you not to dare make a decision until you have information. Okay. And so that's what I'm going to help. First thing is I ask questions and then I provide information, because it's just such a big, like, should I use an egg donor, right? You may have had the same thing with where you should go for IVF, or if you should do IVF, or, do you have all the information first? So here's a series of questions that I tend to ask my clients is, do you feel like you can get this done with your own eggs? Talk to me about doing another egg retrieval, okay? Assuming we don't have embryos on ice, right? They probably wouldn't be talking about doing an egg donor then, but I'm just making assumptions right now. But if it's like, okay, we're going to probably go into another 3 rounds of IVF. All right, we're going to bank embryos, get as many embryos as possible before heading into a transfer. Can you do that financially? Can you do that mentally? Because when we're talking about using an egg donor, there's definitely a mental piece to it, but there is a true financial piece to it. So if you are not done doing IVF on your own, I take that very seriously, because how you feel means a lot to me. And especially if we've seen results, but we just haven't seen great results, that's gonna also add to this inputting, right? So that we can get to the inputting information to get to an answer. So what I mean by that is, are we making embryos? All right. I would say about 70% of my clients come to me saying they've been told they need egg donor. 5% actually do. Okay. Now, I just want you to kind of sit with that, because just because you've been told you need an egg donor, doesn't necessarily mean that you do. You may be told because for various reasons. But if you are making embryos, you could have a baby with your own eggs. If you can't even get to an egg retrieval, or every time you get to an egg retrieval, they haven't fertilized or grown to a day 3, first thing I'm going to do is look at the protocol and things like that, right? Look at the lab. But let's say, that would be a time to say, I've done this plenty of times, the right way, the right protocol, the right clinic is just not going anywhere. So these are the types of questions like, how do you feel doing another 3 egg retrievals? Can you afford it? And then go into an egg donor. Mentally, how do you feel doing another? And you don't have to commit to 3, but I'm just like putting that out there of like at least another 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. If you're at a point where you're like, I don't know if I should use an egg donor, we're probably not talking past 3 more egg retrievals. That would probably be the max. And so then mentally, kind of like, where are you at with that? Okay, mentally is big. Like I've had people, even when they're deciding between another egg retrieval or a transfer, and I do that, like, close your eyes. Okay, you're going to do another egg retrieval. What do you feel? Sometimes they feel like suffocating. It's not time to do another egg retrieval. Oh, but I need to. No. It's really not. Your body knows best, and your body will tell you the right answer if you're willing to listen to it. Okay, so mentally, where are we at? Financially, where are we at? Do we actually make embryos? That's kind of the baseline type of questions. And then the second thing that after that kind of series of questions, it might already be clear what the answer is, but let's say it's not clear. Then no matter what, even if you're just considering an egg donor, you don't have to do anything. Let me rephrase that. We need more pieces of information. And so what I send along is podcasts that I've done with people who have used egg donors. One, is somebody who just used an egg donor from the start. One had a biological child and then used an egg donor for the second. I have many clients that have done that. So we need to hear people talk about it, and then we need to understand the process more. And there are 3 places that you can go to understand the process even better. Again, we talk to people who have actually, or we'll first listen to people that have actually done it. Okay. And then we are going to have, actually, I'm going to call it 4 different sources of information. So the first one is people who have actually done it. I can get you on a phone call with people who have done it. If you don't know people yourself, and again, what is your situation? Do you have a child and this would be for the second, or is this from the start? Really important. But the first thing I want you to do is listen, right, to the podcast of people talking about it, because I'm sure the questions that you have asked have been asked in these podcasts. So we're saturating, we're getting a little bit of saturation of what it means to consider an egg donor without spending a lot of time, and definitely without spending any money yet, right? We're just gathering info. So listen to the podcast that I have. Talk to people who have done it, right? And then we want to talk to outside sources. So if you're working with a clinic, it's important to talk to them. What options do I have with you, right? If I'm going to be using an egg donor with you, what are the options? What egg banks do you work with? Tell me about this, right? Especially if I work in many different countries. It looks differently, right? Depending on which country that you're in. So talk to what is actually available to you. You've already talked to people who have done it, and you've gotten that sense, and you've listened to and talked to people who've done it. Now let's talk to the person you might actually be doing it with, which is your clinic, and understand what is available. Okay, pieces of information. There are two other resources that I know of. I think they are definitely for US. I don't know about Canada. I don't think it's outside of the US and Canada. So I apologize for all of you that are outside the country that I live in. But the two sources that I know of are, there's an online source called GoStork. I just like it as a reference, to be honest. GoStork.com, because you can find egg donors on site. And what's just kind of cool is to just see what's out there, right? What is out there? You can pick it by religion, and you could pick it by education and height, eye color. Like, it's just, I think, and the whole key about, I think I did a podcast with the founder of GoStork a while ago, but his whole thing was like, I'm all about upfront costs. What is everything going to cost you? You know, because he is a gay man. So he needed an egg donor and a surrogate. And he just found the whole system to have so many hidden costs. So on his site, GoStork, you can look at the costs, see how long it will take. And again, just kind of search the egg donor bank. I find it to just be like, oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. You can filter by this, or this is important to me, whatever. You've already talked to people, and you can learn from my podcast as well as talking to them how they kind of picked. But this is where you can just look to see what kind of inventory is out there now, understanding that inventory is always changing. Okay. The other source that I have, and again, that's free. I know they offer free consults. Ultimately, I don't think you hire them. They refer you to, don't quote me on this, but I think I have this right. They refer you to either egg banks or clinics, and then they get a referral fee. It's something like that. That's how they get paid. The other one is Donor Concierge, and I have direct contacts there. I think her name is Cynthia, and you do pay them. It's almost like how I'm a consultant for IVF. You pay them to basically do all the work for you. Okay. I want you to find me a donor that XYZ. I don't want her to ever speak to the kid, or I do want her to want to know the kid. I want this religion that's really hard to find, or I want this ethnicity that is hard to find, right? They do all the work for you. There's nothing for you to figure out. So that's what I understand Donor Concierge does. And again, I have a direct contact. I can just put you on an email with them. And again, I think it's like Michelle and Cynthia. I think Cynthia, or maybe her name is Cynthia Michelle. Who cares? Just email me. Okay. And I'll put you in contact with them. I forgot how much their service is. I want to say it's like 4,000 to 5,000, but don't quote me on that. I do not remember. But you could at least do a free consult with them to understand. You can ask them questions, right? We're just gathering information. We're putting in a little bit of time and no money yet. We're gathering information. You can understand what they do, and like, why would I pay somebody to like do this for me when I could just go to my clinic? They will explain to you the benefits. Okay. So there's that. And then the last resource that I just thought of as I was talking with you, and I have a contact for this as well, and I did a podcast with her, is a lawyer. Now, if you are using an egg donor that you know, okay, you are hiring a friend or family member to be your egg donor, you need a lawyer. Same thing with the surrogate or any kind of third party, right? Family building. You need a lawyer. So her name is Rajan Sunray fertility law, Sunray fertility law. And, she knows me. I can put you in contact with her. And again, she is so nice, and she is like so fair with her pricing. At least she was when I had other people work with her. So I highly recommend her. Again, her name, I remember it being like Rajan, Rojan or something like that. She could not be more lovely. Anyway, this is not coming up, but I'm sure it will. But Sunray Fertility, again, say I know Tasha Blasi, and no, we don't get referral fees or anything like that. Yeah, she works on fertility financing, wills and trusts, embryo, egg donor, sperm donation, all kinds of things. So she's amazing. Okay. And so those would be the resources. Okay. Now let's get into some of my facts versus myths. And then if you have any questions, just let me know. But the first myth that I want you to be very careful about is an egg donor is a guaranteed pregnancy. Now, if I've taught you anything, there is a whole transfer process, and the transfer process involves the embryo. Let's assume this is a 20-something-year-old embryo or egg that made the embryo and it's healthy. But there is the egg, there is the uterus, and there is the body. One is the body in survival mode, and two, the body's response to the medication, meaning, do we have the right protocol for you? So I have had people work with me that are using egg donor and still not getting pregnant, okay? Because their embryo check is done. There's something else going on, and that's what I helped discover. So like one of my clients, I know she's done, it was either a group call or a podcast, so I can use her name, but her name is Caroline. She's in a different country, and she had 24-year-old donor eggs and they weren't implanting. Okay. We worked on survival mode. We worked on the protocol, and the very next transfer, she did implant. So I just I'm not saying that to like scare you, but just keep in mind, you still need you need your body to be a little bit out of survival mode or more, or just not totally in survival mode. And you need the right protocol. Okay. Assuming we have the right embryo, and of course, check for the uterus. Anything blocking the uterus, those two tests I typically recommend: hysteroscopy, endometrial biopsy, to check for infection. It's that third part, the body, right? The protocols and survival mode shift. That's where the customization should really come in for you. Okay. Next myth is this is not going to be my own child. All right. This is not only not going to be my own child, but my child will want another mom. Oh, that is not true. Okay. That is full myth. I have done this long enough where I can tell you with 100% certainty, and I'm even about to cry thinking about this. So that means how strong I feel about this. The child that shows up will be your child. And in fact, the child that shows up might even be more your child than, if you have a male partner providing the sperm, a husband, like more your child than even your husband's. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Using an egg donor is just another pathway for your child to come in through. So I always say, you can choose to be a mom. You can't choose when, how, and who shows up. How? They may be needing a different tunnel to get to you, okay? You may be on a bridge and they need to come through the tunnel, okay? Doing my New York reference. So it is just how they think it should be. This has nothing to do with you. You haven't failed as a woman. You haven't failed as a whatever. Your body isn't less of a woman because of it. It just needed a tunnel instead of a bridge. And you keep on going over the bridge. Okay? It's still the same child that is trying to get through. And I know that seems crazy, but talk to literally anybody who has used an egg donor. And it is the most perfect child to come at the most perfect time. for their family. Again, even people who have already had a biological child, this next child fits in just as well. Okay. I also think we get caught up in like, oh, I want it to look like me, or I want it to look like my husband, or that's not up to you. Okay. And the best lesson in parenting is no conditions or expectations on how this other human is supposed to show up. A great example of this is if you've been in partnerships, if you have a husband, you may have thought about what your, like for me, my husband would be, right? Brian is nothing like what I thought my husband would be. That being said, he's even better because my limited mind is limited. Does that make sense? Same thing with like the children that show up. It's like you can think about, I want them to look like this and I want them to be like this. And the child that shows up is beyond what you can think about on your own. And that's a beautiful thing. I could have never guessed that Hudson would be who Hudson is and Mila would be who Mila is. Could have never. You can't make this shit up. Like you can't. That's crazy. Okay? And how different they are. It's literally doesn't make sense. So it doesn't matter whose egg it is. It's the same kid that shows up just through a different pathway. All right. If you've talked to me about this, I've definitely mentioned this. Like, Mila doesn't look like me at all. And in fact, now that she's just turned 10, she often tells me, Mom, we look nothing alike. And I was like, she's like, no, seriously, nothing. I don't even, like, I look like, she mentions Kate, my trainer. I look like, I forgot, you're supposed to say Kate, my trainer, because she's just like blonde and tall and lanky, like Mila. But I'm like pointed, and she doesn't act like me at all. Like people are always like, ooh, she's the boss. She's sassy. I'm like, if you think I acted like that, I did what I was told, right? I was a middle child. You tell me rules are safe. We do rule. I like rules. Okay. That's me. And it's not Mila. But why I tell you this is she could have easily been ignorant about how she looks and acts. She wasn't, I don't think. I can look at the paperwork a little bit more closely. But what I know is that's who needed to show up. Does that make sense? She acts nothing like me, and that's okay because that's who needed to show up for me. And oh my gosh, the lessons that I have learned because of her. Just when I thought I knew something, she came along to tell me how dumb I was. Not in a disrespectful way, in a humbling way. Okay. Oh, you think you got this? I'm here. Okay. Oh, you think you got this parenting thing down? No. That was Hudson. Now there's Mila. Okay. So it is show your child no matter what. Period. I cannot stress that enough. And the weirdest thing is I even have seen children of donor eggs look like their mom. Like it's just a thing. They look like their mom a lot more than me looks like me. Another kind of myth is this: it's all bad stories we tell ourselves. So you're just telling yourself lies. That's my short version of it. I've come up with better stories. You need to be a better storyteller. But another myth is my child will want to find their own mother and not want you as their mother. I am going to break the news to you that any child that you have will eventually want a new mother. Okay, if you're parenting correctly, that means with boundaries, with rules, your kid should have one of those, I'd like to change you in for this mom that allows all this other stuff that you don't. When that happens, not if that happens, when that happens, I want you to pat yourself on the back because that means you are putting your child's best interest in mind. Okay, you're putting your child's best interest in mind because you have rules for their safety. Children are meant to push the line, as you know. Teenagers are meant for risk. That's literally in their DNA, risk. Okay, you are meant to. This is how I do it, at least. And again, this isn't a parenting thing, but I tell Mila, right? She's the only one that. Well, anyway. Mila, okay, so here's the ring. You can do whatever you want, and that ring keeps on expanding, and you get more and more independence. And now your ring gets bigger and bigger. Just think about this big ring. And then when you show me we've expanded the boundaries too much, we need to collapse the boundaries in a little bit and rein you in, right? Yes, and kind of referring to how you do a horse, but just as a visual, but that's what I'm talking about. So when that happens to you, it is not because you had an egg donor, it's because you are being a protective parent. Okay. The last kind of myth is that everybody, well, not everybody, it's kind of like, how do I tell people about it, and how do I tell my kid about it? And will my kid be recognized as part of the family if my family knows? Now, I'm going to just address that really fast because that is really a cultural thing. That is a small segment of my clients where their parents' generation don't recognize anybody that's not blood, if that makes sense. And I have many effed up stories about my own family, but the point is, you are creating your family unit. Your family unit is going to be you, your child, and a partner if you have one, and that's it. Once you have a child or once you have a partner that you're dedicated to, that's your family unit. And as hard as it may be, nobody else matters. I'm not saying be disrespectful, not be kind, don't have love. I freaking would do anything for my mom, and I love her, and she's not, I was going to say she's not judgy. She's not, she would never care if I literally had an egg donor and a surrogate and adopted a child and didn't have children. She just, she's open-minded. So that being said, I don't have that issue, but if you do have that issue, that's not your problem. And that has nothing to do with your family. And I do not, let me change that. I challenge you to own your family. And don't let anybody else own your family. You are the head of that household. Other people, family members, friends, can either have the gift of your family as it is or not. You choose to not tell your aunt that you're having a donor egg? Great, who cares? But don't not create the family of your dreams because somebody is full of shame and therefore has to shame others to feel normal. Because that's all that is. You can't project what you aren't inside. So I'm just going with your aunt. Your aunt, if projecting, oh, that's not blood. That's not good. That's yuck. Shame on you for wanting an egg donor. She is full of shame. That is the lowest point on the vibrational scale. Look it up, shame and judgment, the lowest point. The hardest, stiffest, reddest point with the lowest number on the vibrational scale. You go into acceptance. That's nice and high on the vibrational scale. Yeah, we're right here. Shame, number 20. Acceptance, 350. They can love, 500. They can find joy, peace, enlightened. I still don't get what that means. I don't think I'm enlightened. I don't know what that means. I think that's awesome. I just need more work. Okay, we all do. So when it comes to people won't accept, F them, because that's not your family unit. And I want you to protect your family unit because that's all that matters. Okay? And do the work to get there. And if you're in the program, I will help you do that work. I will personally get on calls with you and do that work. Okay? Then last part is like conversations with the kid, how to have it. And this kind of goes along with communicating it in other ways. And again, if your aunt is very judgy, you don't need to tell her that you've an egg donor. But in general, how do you talk about this? How do you communicate with this? It would be so weird, so awkward. That's my last myth. And this is where I want to say to you, that's your choice. How your belief around using an egg donor is your choice. I believe an egg donor is just another tunnel to get that same child to you. Like, I believe there is zero difference. I believe you can absolutely talk about like, listen, I kept on using baby seeds from my own bag and trying to implant them in my stomach and they wouldn't grow. So I finally got baby seeds from another mommy's bag and those grew, and that's you. It's still the same seed. It's just from a different bag, right? I don't know if you want to use that analogy. I don't know how good that was, but my point is you get to choose what it means to have an egg donor. You don't get to choose what other people think it is to have an egg donor, but you absolutely get to choose how you think or what you believe about using an egg donor. So from the start, I would, and it's something that would probably evolve over time, but from the start, I would have open communication. My kids know they were expensive. I paid a lot of money for them. They were born in a lab. Like, doesn't anyone kind of know what that means? She's getting to the point of like sex ed, right? And I'll eventually explain to her. But right now it was like, we made the baby seed in a lab. You're an IVF baby. She knows that, right? Like, but that doesn't like faze me in any way. And I understand my profession and stuff. But my point is like, I talked to her like, it's actually great. This is a great way to be. You know, once you get older, you can even be like, listen, I didn't even have sex with your dad to have you, right? Ew, right? Those people that have to have sex, ew, gross, right? Especially when they first started on sex and it's like the grossest thing they've ever heard, right? I know. That's why I didn't do that. I had you in the lap. I was proper about it. So anyway, the short version is you get to choose what an egg donor means to you, not to anybody else. And therefore, I challenge you to choose it to just mean no big effing deal. And it just means there was a different bag of baby seeds you had to use, or however you want to explain it. And I loved you so much that I wasn't willing to not live without you. So I did everything possible to have you show up. I definitely had this conversation with Mila. We joke, oh my gosh, why did you take 3 years to show up? She thinks it's like funny. You know, what were you doing? Giving me 3 years. You know how hard that was? So you can choose to think about it and explain it any way you want, but I challenge you to think about it in a high vibration, because it is. It's a beautiful thing, using an egg donor, the opportunity to use an egg donor. It's a beautiful thing. It absolutely could be thought about with love and joy, and even a little bit lower on the vibrational scale would be like acceptance, willingness. Willingness is right there. Willingness is at 310. Like, I just have a willingness to look at egg donor as it is. It's just a tool, right? Right below willingness is neutrality. And that's also a great way to think about an egg donor. It's like, it's not good or bad. It's not weird or not. It just is. It just is. And whether I use an egg donor or use my own eggs, it's the same kid. That's true neutrality. Okay. All right, my loves. So I hope that this was a helpful conversation about the facts and myths and just kind of like how to go about choosing to use an egg donor and the steps to take. Of course, if you have any questions for me, just email me and I'd be glad to help you. I'd be glad to put you in contact with any of those resources that I talked about directly. They should know me, and I can make the introduction for you if that would be helpful.
Well, that was our uncovering for the day. If you have a feeling that your IVF protocols or strategies could use a second opinion, start with our website, tashablasi.com, for resources and even a free discovery call where we can learn about your specific IVF needs and see how we can help.